welcome to the Marin Women's Political Action Committee Candidate Endorsement Night. My name is Tammy Hall. For those who don't know me, I am on the board of the Marin Women's PAC. I'm treasurer, and I am the acting chair of the endorsement committee because Michelle Barney went someplace fun. She planned it way before we planned this night, so we can't fault her too much. So I want to let you all know that we are being videotaped. If you haven't figured that out yet, this is Damien with, wave to Damien. Where are all the cameras, Damien?
1, 2, 3, 4.
So everybody's on camera? Everybody's on camera. So smile, touch up your makeup, your hair. And he's with the Community Media Center of Marin, and this video will be posted on our website, in about a week? Couple days. Oh, Damien says a couple days. That's on Damien's side. We still have to deal with our webmaster, so I'm not sure how many days it will take him. But Damien will be ready in a couple days, so that's good. I would like to also introduce the rest of the endorsement committee. We have Frida Zolan, Rave, get a wave over there. Joan Thayer, Gina Brewer. So they're, if you haven't been to one of these events before, they're the questioners. They have all the questions. They don't have all the answers. That's what the candidates have to have. We also have on our committee Greg Brockbank, who's got a whistle. That's dangerous. He is going to be our timekeeper. We'll talk about that in a minute. Samantha Sargent, who you met when you came in. Did Samantha come in? I don't see Samantha. She must still be outside at the table with Dottie Lemieux. And Vicki Nichols. There's Vicki on the committee. And Gayshan Cunningham, who couldn't be here tonight. So Greg is the timekeeper. The candidates really need to pay attention to the timekeeper. Everybody else who's not a candidate and up on the days, you can help Greg if the candidates don't pay attention to him. Because what we're going to do is allow a 2-minute opening statement, and then each question that gets asked, every candidate will get 1 minute to answer the question. Greg's got a 30-second warning sign. He's got a 1-minute warning sign, and he has one that says stop. I think we need to have a bigger stop sign.
They'll see it.
But he's got a whistle, so we're good.
And if you see it not, he's showing it. If you see it, so I'm not.
Yeah, you don't want me to have to run over there and start waving at you, or go turn off your mic. So we are covering 5 city council races tonight: Sausalito, Fairfax, San Anselmo, Novato, and Tiburon, and in that order. So that's always good. Everybody has an agenda? Great. I'll get to you in a minute, Ronita. Does everybody have a ballot? Everybody has a ballot? Good. If you don't?
If you're a member.
Members, right. So everybody can have an agenda. Only members can have ballots. And Dottie and Samantha have those at the table outside. And let's see, I already talked about the minutes. So then we have cards, so question cards. So you can't raise your hand and ask a question from out in the audience. You need to write your question down and give it to Renita. Raise your hand, Renita Egger, who is helping us tonight. She's got index cards if you need them. She's got some pencils if you need them. And I would start snagging some cards now because I'm sure you're going to have questions. So give your question to Renita. She will give it to the questioners, and then they will ask the questions if they don't already have it. And I've been on that side, so I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of questions get asked by multiple people in slightly different ways, and so we try to condense them and make it one cogent question. And the other thing I should tell you is that your question can't be specific, like, I'm going to ask John Reed what he thinks about X. That's not going to fly. We're going to rephrase that so that we ask it to everybody if we can. If we can't, then that question doesn't get answered. So try to write your questions in a way that we can actually use them. And let's see. What else do I have? Oh, caucus. So at the end of the evening, we kick all of the non-members out. Candidates get kicked out as well. Right. Candidates who are members also get kicked out. And the remaining people who are members who aren't candidates, we sit, discuss, we caucus, and we do, hopefully, the final ballot decisions. There is some people who believe that you need to wait till the caucus to fill out your ballot. I'm not in that group, so I'm not going to push for that. But then once the ballots are, if you can't stay through the end of the caucus, you need to give your ballot to, who are we giving the ballots to? I don't have that. Uh-oh. You? Okay, so give your ballots to Gina. That means that if they decide to leave in between Sausalito and Fairfax, they're going to run down here and hand it to you. I think it needs to be somebody else. You can handle that? Okay. And so, and then we have to talk about on the ballots, if you don't want to vote for somebody, you have two options. You could just leave it blank. If you don't, and I always have to read this because I get this wrong. If you do not want your vote counted in a particular race, choose the abstain button. You can hit abstain. If you would like to recommend no endorsement and have your vote counted, then choose that option. So the no endorsement votes get counted, the abstain votes do not. And there's been some confusion on that in the past. And we usually talk about the number of candidates in each ballot, and the men versus women. So we endorse women, we can recommend men, but only if there aren't.
There's more open seats than there are
Right.
candidates, then
We can recommend a man. So there's opportunities for men to get recommendations, I think, this evening, based on who the candidates are. Unfortunately, we don't have all women running. We all have to change that. Okay.
What percentage is necessary for a recommendation?
Oh, sorry, it's 50.1%. Sometimes we do have to get the calculator out. Gets close.
Chair, I have a question. How many questions should we ask of a given set of candidates?
It's usually about 3 to 5. It depends on how short their answers are, how long their answers are. So if they're talking too much, we may have to, keep it to 3. Our goal is 5, but we don't always make it. Yeah, we have time limits in the agenda, and we will be keeping to that. So when we get close to those times, I might just say, no more questions.
Okay.
Got to wrap it up. And a big one for the candidates, the last one, don't touch the microphone.
The instructions that were sent out said you had 1 minute to answer a question, is that correct?
Yes.
So just any question we get, we have 1 minute.
Right, and so the way that we do it is you start out with your 2-minute opening statement, and then the questioners start asking questions, and we usually start at one end, and whoever that first person is, they answer the question, then go down the days, and then the second question gets asked by the next person in, and so the person who answered the first question first and answers the second question last, and it just rotates through.
1 minute closing?
No. No. We've decided we don't have the time for that with the 5 races.
Is the caucusing, is Damien going to turn off the camera?
Yes,
before we caucus?
yes. The caucus will not be filmed.
We've done that before.
We caught it, but yes, he's very good. He wants to capture everything. So I just want to make sure everybody understands, don't touch the microphones, other than you get to hit a button that says push, that turns it on. There's a green light, that's it. And it's really hard, trust me, to not touch the microphone. And so you may hear from Damien or from me, don't touch the microphone. And that's pretty much it. So I think, have I left anything out?
Men, women, endorsement, recommendation.
You weren't paying attention.
All right, guess not.
I will repeat it for, do you know how it goes? Okay. Anybody else? All right. Yes? There's 3 seats. Right.
And I'd also request from the chair an extension to 3 minutes and 30 seconds due to the fact that I'm not able to respond to any questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we limit it to 2.
Okay. All right. That's it.
That's all you have?
Or no, oh, sorry. I thought we were going to do it.
All right, now go. 2 minutes.
Okay, let's go. So Melissa's very sorry that she couldn't be here tonight, but she has a very good excuse. She's committed to participate in a marathon charity swim on the Juan de Fuca Strait from Washington State to Canada, and she was unable to change this around to come to this meeting. One thing I admire about Melissa is that when she makes a commitment, she keeps it, and when I tell you that she is committed to bringing new leadership to Sausalito, I mean it. Melissa decided to run because, like many of you, she was heavily impacted by what's happening on the national level. While Congress continued to make decisions that seemed out of her control, she realized that at the local level was where she could have the most impact. So, on the day of the healthcare vote in the House, when she had been enraged by the dysfunction of Congress, she researched running for local office. On that very day, Councilmember Weiner had stepped down and left a vacant seat in Sausalito. So Melissa took action. She is running to bring a fresh perspective to the City Council because it's time that Sausalito let go of years of entrenched political battles of one side against the other and look towards new solutions for progress together. Progress means consensus building and working together to find common ground. That's something that Melissa has devoted her career to. She's worked with Democrats at every level of government, from President Barack Obama to Congresswoman Gabby Giffords to Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom. She works with the European Commission to negotiate with the U.S. government on policies to improve business practices for startups. She has the know-how, but she doesn't have the baggage. She has a completely fresh perspective, unbeholden to the infighting and focused solely on the success of the residents of Sausalito. She has new ideas for the town that she has already outlined, such as her ideas to address bikes in Sausalito by diverting them away from the city, which she outlined in her op-ed that many of you have had the chance to read in the Marin IJ, which in fact she wrote as a result of attending this organization's candidate training, so thank you for that. Melissa is a young woman, but she's already fought extensively for the advancement of women's rights. She served on the board of San Francisco women's group, Women Get It Done, which brings women together across generations to promote positive dialogue and empowerment. She worked for UN Women, spreading the message of women's empowerment.
All right, you're out. You're done.
And
Your time is up.
with UN Women to spread the message of positive empowerment around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, audience, helping stop the candidates. Okay.
Great. Hi, I'm pleased to be here tonight. My name is Susan Cleveland Knowles, and I'm running for Sausalito City Council. I wanted to emphasize 3 points. First, I wanted to emphasize my extensive and relevant experience for this position. I have served for 18 years as a deputy city attorney in San Francisco with a focus on transportation and land use issues, which, as you all know, are incredibly important to Sausalito and to Marin County. I also have local experience in Sausalito. I'm currently the chair of the Planning Commission and have served on the Planning Commission for 4 years. I have been on several local task forces, including the Housing Element Task Force, another very important issue in Sausalito and Marin County, and the Short-Term Rental Task Force. I volunteer extensively in our local public schools. I'm the proud mom of 2 kids, and I serve on the Willow Creek Foundation Board, and I've also volunteered as a room parent, field trip driver, etc. The second thing I wanted to emphasize is that I'm focused on sensible solutions for Sausalito. I am a big believer in strong and improved infrastructure. I fought hard for Measure F to improve our parks and voted for Measure O that improves streets, sewers, and other infrastructure. I am looking for solutions and open to solutions on moving forward with important issues in Sausalito, like tourist bike traffic, the ferry landing, anchor outs, and other issues that citizens care about. Lastly, I'm a very collaborative person. I've shown that in my tenure on the Planning Commission. I strive to work hard with all members of the community to listen in a respectful tone, and I will bring that to my role as City Council. I've worked with all 4 City Council members on various projects and think I can work collaboratively with all of them. Lastly, I was proud today to get the endorsement of the Sierra Club, and I would welcome the endorsement of the Marin Women PAC. So thank you for having me tonight.
All right, questions?
Okay,
Take one.
yeah. All right. What solutions do you see to address the influx of bicyclists, which affects the overcrowded ferries, sidewalk safety, and motorist frustration?
Great, good question. So Sausalito, for those of you who don't know, has a lot of tourist bicycle traffic. This is not our good commute bicyclists and other residents who cycle on the weekend. These are tourists from San Francisco generally who ride bikes into San Francisco on our narrow streets and take the ferry back. And it's great to have people bicycling into Sausalito instead of coming in on tour buses, but we need to manage the traffic in a serious and sensible way. I am for taking the three things that the city has already done and making sure that those are enforced much more strongly. We already have a good law on the books that prohibits bicycle parking on the sidewalk. The bikes have to park in a contained space. We need to really enforce that. There are bikes cluttering our sidewalks and making ADA compliance an issue in addition to sidewalk clutter. We also need to work more with our partners, the ambassadors. And I'm being closed off. So.
Hey, Joan.
I have a question from the public, and it's please describe your thoughts and feelings regarding Sausalito City Schools and charter schools in general.
Great. That is such a complicated and controversial question in Sausalito. For those of you that don't know, the Marin City Sausalito School District covers both Sausalito and Marin City. We're a very small school district with 550 children in 2 different schools. We have a charter school with over 400 children and the traditional public school Bayside with 130, I think. All the children in the Sausalito Marin City School District deserve a good education, and we are working hard to make that happen. Half of the kids at Willow Creek are high need, meaning, they're high need, and all of the kids at Bayside MLK are high need. We are working hard to make sure that both schools are resourced. My children go to Willow Creek Academy, and I'm very proud that we have an excellent education there. I think the form of the school, charter or traditional public school, doesn't matter. It's that you get a good public education in the district.
Okay, this question is also from the audience. How can you unite Sausalito and Marin City?
So thank you. So Marin City just is not part of the Sausalito City limits, so not under the jurisdiction of the Sausalito City Council, but Marin City is a partner in many important issues, the school district being one of them. Also, we share access at the 101 freeway interchange, and where there's been flooding, and we need to work with Marin City to address those issues. And we've got a great infrastructure improvement project going on there at the intersection to address sea level rise and other flooding issues. Also, our kids go to school with kids from Marin City. They're all in the same school district, and those bridges, the social events, the soccer games, the basketball games are, I think, one of the most important ways to bring the 2 communities together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we good?
Okay,
Greg, you're cutting me off. I'm not even talking.
That's time.
okay, with the varying strong opinions with the city council, how will you work to find viable solutions amid such divided opinion?
So I actually think our Sausalito City Council has 4 great members. One of them is here tonight. And the tenor of the council in the recent past has actually been quite collaborative and productive. I think I would fit in well with the 4 current members. I've worked with all of them on various committees and worked towards solutions. In the past, you may have seen some viral videos of hand slapping and other inappropriate activity, but that, I hope to make that an issue of the past.
We don't have to do that one. unless you think-
Okay.
I've got one.
I have one.
Yeah, you have 3 more minutes. That clock is fast.
Rita has one.
Okay.
Should the Sausalito Ferry Landing be upgraded? How and why?
So that's an issue of great debate in Sausalito right now. I sit on the Planning Commission, and there, okay, you've saved me. Let me know when you're ready. So I sit on the Planning Commission, so we currently have a revised project in front of the City Council, and I can't state my opinion about that particular project because there's been a lot of bouncing back between the Planning Commission and the City Council. We're hoping that it gets resolved at the City Council, but if it doesn't, then I wouldn't want to be recused from a future vote. But overall, in the past Planning Commission hearings, I've stated my feeling that the ferry is an important and integral part to Sausalito's history, charm, and character, not to mention a very vital way for me and many other Sausalito residents to get to work. And for our kids to go to ball games and have, fun in the city without adding to congestion on the road. So it's an exceedingly important way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and I'm hoping that the City Council can find a good solution with the Bridge District to move Sausalito forward.
Okay,
You have 2 more minutes. Do you have any more questions for Sausalito?
This is the marathon.
okay.
It's going fast because there's only one person to answer questions.
Okay, John.
This is a very broad question. It'll be asked of all of the, I think, all of the candidates tonight. And it's global warming with rising sea levels is in the forefront of the news. How should the cities in Marin start to prepare for this eventuality?
Great. Well, that's a great question, and I think it's just fantastic that the County of Marin, especially our county supervisors, have taken such a strong leadership role in advancing responses to sea level rise. And not only have they taken a strong position, but they have worked very closely with local communities, including Sausalito, to form a partnership and make sure everybody is on the same page in terms of the information, the science, and ways to outreach to the community. So Sausalito has been very engaged in that process. I feel like it's exceedingly important, especially for a town located near the bay, on the bay, and with many roadways that will be impacted by sea level rise. So I appreciate the county's efforts and will do everything possible as a city council member to advance the recommendations and the work that's going through the county right now.
Great, thank you. I think that's our time.
Great.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
So let's call up Fairfax candidates. You can spread out, you can sit next to each other. I'm not going to make y'all sit together if you don't want to. It might tell us something, but I like how the girls are on one side and the boys are on the other. Okay, everybody got, John, you guys all need to turn on your microphones, so hit the push button. Bruce is on. There you go. Okay, well, we'll start with Bruce with your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. So I'm running for council, stepping up to this for much the same reasons we heard before, that this is the times we're living in. So I have quite a bit of experience in Fairfax. I've been working for quite a few years with the community on General Plan Advisory Committee. We wrote the general plan along with the Town Council, Planning Commission, and many other people in the community. And then I chaired that, went on to chair the General Plan Implementation Committee. John Reed was also on those with me. And we wrote the Climate Action Plan, and I now chair the Climate Action Committee, and I've been a planning commissioner for 2.5 years. So I've really enjoyed my work in Fairfax, and I feel like I get along well with people, been encouraged to run by many people, and so I'm stepping up to the plate. I listen well and seek to have many viewpoints heard, and as for my scientific background, I really appreciate being able to first gather the facts and then come up with creative solutions. And that's really one of the core things I think we need to work on is with some of the social media things, we end up that by the time a town meeting happens, we sometimes see opinions that have kind of been formed ahead of time. I would like to do better than that. Some relevant things here. My wife Diane is a midwife, and my daughter runs a woman-run farm in Bolinas, growing vegetables. And I have worked with the Midwives Alliance of North America as a volunteer for 20 years, and many of those years nearly full-time, creating an epidemiological database for them, which is used to promote women's choice in birth and safety in birth through research. So, thank you.
Yeah, I just
You
start.
just
You
start?
ready, Greg? All right. My name's John Reed. I'm currently the mayor of Fairfax, and I've been on the council for 8 years now, and I'm running for re-election. Let me see. I guess before I was on the council, I ran the volunteer board for 6 years, something like that, 6.5 years. And let me see. I was also on the General Plan Advisory Committee with Bruce, and before that, I guess I was also an advocate for Safe Routes to School. We started the first Safe Routes to School in the country, really, at Manor School in Fairfax, and then gradually grew that program. And basically, so I have a lot of experience with the community. I helped coordinate volunteers after the flood in '05. And basically, I play well with others. I listen to people quite attentively, and I try to come to a solution that's right. It's something that works in a creative, problem-solving sort of way. One of the illustration of that is our recent approval of Victory Village. It's a low-income housing project for a senior, not a low-income housing project. It's an affordable senior housing project in Fairfax. It's 54 units. One of those is a manager's unit, but all the rest of them are affordable. We basically, at the suggestion of one of our constituents that came up, there was a case law that allowed us to pretty much design a zoning that allowed that project to go forward without us having to rejigger our zoning laws in Fairfax, which was there was a lot of objections in the community to that. And it basically allowed that project to go forward on time so that they could keep their funding, which was very important, and in a way that really got support of, I think, just about everybody in Fairfax. I mean, you can never get 100%, but anyway, that's what I bring to it. And now we'll listen to Greg here a little bit.
Greg, let me know when you're ready. Barbara Kohler. Ready? Good evening. I'm honored to have served on the Fairfax Town Council these last 4 years and as mayor in 2015. I was appointed in May of 2013 and then elected in November of the same year as the top vote getter. In these times of national political turmoil, I think it's critical that we elect good, ethical people with integrity to local office. I believe I meet and exceed these qualifications. I'm a 21-plus year Fairfax resident with 28 years overall in Marin. I'm a scientist with bachelor's and master's degrees in biological sciences. I have a long-term commitment to protection of public health and the environment, with more than 20 years running statewide hazardous waste site cleanup and permitting for Cal EPA, and 5 years enforcing air quality regulations for the 9 counties of the Bay Area Air District. I'm currently the administrator of a significant climate change program for CAPCOA, the nonprofit that serves the 35 California air districts. I have an excellent track record of accomplishments on the council. If I'm reelected, my primary areas of focus are living within our budget, maintaining and improving our aging infrastructure, protecting our ridgelines, open space, small town character, and providing adequate housing, and supporting our fight against global warming and our environmental sustainability ethics. I serve on several boards and committees, notably Marin Clean Energy, Community Media Center of Marin, Marin County Assessment of Fair Housing, and several Town of Fairfax committees. I have many endorsements, notably Supervisor Katie Rice, all of the Fairfax Town Council, Larry Bragman, the Marin Democrats, both the Marin Professional and Ross Valley Firefighters Association, the Fairfax Police Officers Association, and many other nonprofit board members and community leaders. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Cindy Swift. I'm a native Californian raised in San Francisco. I come from a union family. My mom was a shop steward in San Francisco, and I also come from a Democratic family. As a young Democrat, I worked on many campaigns in San Francisco, including George McGovern's presidential campaign. I moved to Fairfax 37 years ago and have volunteered with Fairfax and the county ever since. I currently serve on the Fairfax Planning Commission. I was appointed in October. I also serve on the Fairfax Citizens Disaster Council, and I'm the Fairfax Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT, coordinator. I also serve on the boards of the local library and the county library friends group, and I'm a past president of that. I was the co-chair of the successful 2014 county library funding measure. Professionally, my career has been with the Department of Army, first at the Presidio of San Francisco, and later with the Army Corps of Engineers as an IT program and project manager overseeing major Corps-wide IT programs. I'm running to maintain our small town scale and character. My priorities are public safety and disaster preparedness, fixing and maintaining our infrastructure, such as our sidewalks and streets, and improving our pedestrian safety and parking in the downtown area without jeopardizing our small town scale. We must also address floods and fires. We're in a wildland urban interface zone, and we need to address the flooding as well. Having the skills gained in my profession and working in community service on boards and commissions will help me do that. As I talk to residents,
Ooh, she's good.
Hi, I'm Deborah Benson. I have lived in Fairfax for 25 years. I raised my daughter there as a single mother. I have owned and managed an accounting business in Marin for 28 years. I have in the past been a real estate broker, was owner of a property management company. I have a wide range of experience. I'm going to talk about women's issues. I'm in favor of gender equality in the workplace and for narrowing the gender pay gap. There are over 400 firefighters in Marin County, and only 1% are women. And most of the firefighters are paramedics, and 90% of the code calls, the responses are for health reasons, for medical aid. And wouldn't it be nice to have a woman comforting you? Paramedic would be a perfect job for a woman with great benefits. Why haven't our town council members and supervisors done more to make this happen? We need real affordable housing where lower income Fairfax residents can have a decent place to live. There are at least 300 undocumented second units in town. We can meet our state-required RENA numbers by legalizing them. We need to inventory what is here. I'm here tonight for your endorsement. I need you to stand by a woman who's fought all her life for women's rights. In the early 70s, I was one of the first women to be admitted to the Painters and Drywall Finishers Union in Tampa, Florida. I had to work hard for that, and I will work just as hard to serve Fairfax.
Thank you.
Okay. Various ones of you addressed parts of all our questions, so, but we're asking everybody the same questions. Starting with Bruce. let's see. With steep hillside houses and narrow roads, what can Fairfax do to prepare for disasters and need to evacuate?
Well, I had a very interesting discussion with the firefighters union the other day, who they did endorse me. But one of the things, as we were working on the safety element of our general plan, that we concluded was that there's very little we can do about the roads themselves. We take the opportunity when we can to put a turnaround at the end of roads. We certainly add new fire hydrants. But in terms of the biggest thing we can probably do is education. So one thing would be a disaster plan, but something that would stick in people's minds more clearly would be, don't get in your car if you have to evacuate, because as we all know, the Oakland Hills disaster was very much connected with the fact that people jumped in their cars, all started coming down the hill at the same time that the firefighters needed to go up the hill, at the same time as smoke obscured anybody from being able to see. So that one piece of education could go a long way. Thank you.
Wait for the beeping to stop. Yeah, I mean, I think that's very important thing to take into account, and it's I don't want to repeat what Bruce has just said, but I could perhaps build on that. I mean, there's a network of trails, pedestrian right-of-ways in the hills in Fairfax, which is one of the things that got me involved in civic work. Just talking to one of our fire guys who did the recon on the Oakland fire, and put those things out there. I mean, in Oakland, 2,200 houses burned, 25 people died, and the reason why that percentage was so low, and in Fairfax it's expected to be much higher, was because of the people walked down the hills, and the people that died were trying to drive out. So I've been very active over the last 20 years, publishing maps online that show where all the trails are, which ones are blocked, and kind of creating pressure on people who are blocking trails to try to stop blocking them. I've also built a lot of steps with volunteer efforts and gotten a lot of money for Conservation Corps to open them up, and it's ongoing. So thanks.
Greg, let me know when you're ready. Okay, so when I was mayor in 2015, I convened the Citizens Disaster Council that had not been reconvened since 2006. And one of the things we did at that time, we had firefighters, we had Cindy Swift, we had a number of folks in the community work with us on updating our emergency operation plans and our maps. But that's not enough. One of the things my friend Pamela Miggs asked a couple of years ago when I was chairing a sales tax campaign was, we need to have a plan for the community to know what to do. We cannot wait for the firefighters to get up or the police to get up. So I have ensured that we have money in our budget to start putting together a community disaster plan to educate the community. So that's one step, but there's many more that we need to take.
It's a two-pronged effort. It's getting our citizens to be better prepared for a disaster, whether it needs an evacuation or a stay in place. So that's one thing we need to work in the neighborhoods. Another thing with fire is to work in our neighborhoods to make them fire-wise neighborhoods. We're starting to do that in one neighborhood in town. And the third piece of that would be to identify emergency exits in the community so people know if they need to walk out, what trails or what access they can use to do that.
I have been involved with a group in the last month or so who have invited the fire chiefs to come and speak to us. I live in a box canyon in Cascade Drive when there was recently a very disturbing report funded by Fire Safe Marin about the dangers in the canyon. We don't have an evacuation plan at this point. We're working to get one. Also, I think that more money needs to be budgeted to clear these social trails, because a lot of them are being encroached upon and overgrown with impassable bamboo barriers. They need steps. So that's what I would do.
John? You.
My turn? Oh, good. Good. Unfortunately, we live in a period wrought with crippling divisiveness politically. Our way or the highway seems to be the new political norm. What skills or experience do you have in effecting compromises, or more importantly, bringing people in a group to a consensus?
Start with John.
Okay. I agree this is a big problem. And I think that, it really behooves everybody to be able to calm down and listen to each other. And I think that, for instance, next door, while it's very good to have people talking and having information there, often the information there is not always accurate, and there's just so much of it, it's kind of difficult. I mean, you don't want to have a controlled media situation, but I think it's important to get the right information out there. Fairfax has a very low budget, and I've been advocating now for, since this situation has kind of cropped up, for somebody to be able to put accurate information out there, not as a response to different people, but, just press releases in effect, putting out the right amounts of information so that people can have a realistic idea of what's going on. So that's something that I want to continue with. Thanks.
Am I next?
Who's next?
Yes.
Greg, let me know when you're ready. Okay, well, I have quite a bit of experience from my background cleaning up hazardous waste sites statewide. And there you had a lot of people very concerned, a lot of divisiveness. And what we did was a lot of public outreach and a lot of on-the-ground sort of work with people. Also, it wasn't, not everybody was happy, but we usually arrived at a solution that would help people move on and be pleased with the solution. One of the things we've seen in Fairfax is quite a bit of divisiveness over some of the issues that we've raised, and I think what we've done is made a mistake. I think we tried to do things in a global way with the idea of making things better by making wholesale changes that would make things better in our downtown, or some other things like rezoning areas for affordable housing. What that did is create a lot of suspicion. So one of the things we've done as a council, and I've advocated for, stepping back and doing things on a piecemeal basis.
I think my work as a IT program manager, the skills you need for that job is to be able to work collaboratively, to be able to engage community stakeholders. Otherwise, you're not successful as a program manager, so I have those skills. I think we need to do more communication with the community and do it in a manner that speaks plainly so that the community understands what we're saying. And to go out and meet in groups with neighborhoods and like that.
I think that public engagement is very important, and transparency. I think people need to be made aware of the changes that are being made in our town for our town before they are an accomplished act. My experience as a mother of a teenager gives me a lot of ability to effect compromise. And I would carry that forward. And sometimes you can't compromise. If you can't reach a compromise, one side has to capitulate, and the next time a compromise can't be reached, that capitulation should be done by the other side.
Well, I couldn't agree more that we need accurate information. We have seen issues in our town that have been dominated by stuff that's gone out on Nextdoor that it just is impossible to stop. I also couldn't agree more that one way to do that would be to maybe with a town volunteer, but we can't really afford another staff person, but we need to have someone who can really be dedicated to getting information out through Nextdoor or through any other means, just to make sure that people understand clearly and in terms that our citizens can read what's going on. We, working on the Victory Village project, as John said, that reached what I would call a community consensus, and we worked very hard to do that. So we can do it. We've also done some work when we were working on the general plan that I thought were some of the most beautiful moments in Fairfax, and I'd like to see those come back.
Okay. If you're elected, what can you do to address the lack of adequate parking in downtown Fairfax?
Me?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think we're going to have more parking in Fairfax. What I think we need to do is not lose additional parking. Some would say that we're all going to be riding bikes or we're all going to be Ubering places, but I think the reality is there will always be cars. So in the future, we may look at some managed parking, which might include parking meters on weekends, because we have a lot of folks coming into town. But we can move forward and work with folks to limit the number of hours people can park. There are some areas where it's 4 hours. We may change it to 2. So it's kind of innovative approaches, but I think it's unrealistic to think that we would have much more parking than what we already do.
When our general plan was signed, it already spoke to the fact, and this was in 2012 or so, it already spoke to the fact that our last parking survey was 2003, and when the general plan was done, that was already obsolete. We need to identify the number of parking spaces we have now, so we have a baseline, not lose any, but I also think we can gain some in the downtown area by re-looking where we have curbs that are parked red and see if there's any safety reasons for those to be identified as no parking. And if not, go ahead and open those up. We can gain some spots that way, and I think that would help our residents and our businesses that serve those residents.
Me? I don't see us creating additional parking. I think it's really important to keep the parking that we have. Some of the plans that have been set out before us recently have included losing parking spaces in the downtown in order to create bicycle lanes. I think that's a big mistake. I think we also have to deal with transit, increasing our public transit, and maybe having a shuttle service that goes from the downtown up into the hills, into the neighborhoods. I think more people would take public transit if we had a way for them to get from point A to point B, the last leg of the trip, or the first leg of the trip.
I agree with a number of the other comments, including Cindy Swift's, about possibly incrementally improving some parking. But the fundamental thing is that we have a dependence on the private automobile, which is fairly recent. Marin, at one time, people look at it as the good old days, didn't have any cars, and we used trains. One of the things that cars do is separate people from each other. The reason for the need for so much parking is because cars are underutilized. They're used a tiny little bit of the time, and then the rest of the time they sit idle and take up all of our land. we have some solutions, which are, San Francisco is one of the epicenters for this work, for various types of ride sharing and innovative transportation that is coming our way. And we are going to be challenged out here in Marin, and especially all the way at the end of the road in Fairfax, to figure out how these solutions can help us. Yeah. Had to stop there.
Ready? Good. Yeah, it's hard to stop anywhere on this. It's a huge subject. Yeah, it's true. They're not making any more land in downtown Fairfax, and a large percent of downtown Fairfax is used up currently with parking, and the rest of it is really circulation, mostly car-oriented. Our sidewalks are too narrow. There's discontinuity with the various pedestrian rights-of-way that they come into the middle of town. If that can be fixed, that'll help some. We're a recreational destination. A lot of people drive vehicles to Fairfax with bicycles in them, or go hiking, and that needs to be managed better. I think that that can be managed correctly, and move the parking away from right where the businesses need parking. So that's one approach. And transportation as a service, I thought Bruce was going to mention, he probably would have if there was enough time. That's basically enables the jitney system, and I think we're going to see that in the future very soon.
Okay, thank you. This will be for Cindy. This is from the audience. Traffic backs up on Center Boulevard almost to San Anselmo at commute hour. How will Fairfax meet its housing goals without further backing up traffic?
I'm not sure we can do that. With our housing goals, we're looking at infill down in the downtown corridor, trying to legalize our second units that are already rented, doing an amnesty to bring those forward, maybe looking at our building requirements and looking at those from anything that doesn't affect health and safety to make it easy for people to legalize those. I'm not sure we can help the traffic.
I think we have to be really careful about our goals for additional housing in Fairfax. The traffic is backed up just about to San Anselmo Avenue in the evenings. Didn't used to be that way. I think it's a combination of Good Earth, people coming from outside of town to shop at Good Earth, and it's also a result of the development to the north in Novato and Petaluma, and the congestion on the highway. People come the back way. I agree with Cindy that we have to look at legalizing our over 300 second units and provide enough of an incentive to the people to have them come forward. Perhaps in building regulations, perhaps in property tax rebates, allowances.
So the Victory Village that John described, 53 units of affordable housing that we've approved at the far end of town. We hope that we expect that will have whistle stop service that will come directly to it. I've proposed on the Planning Commission that we work with the Golden Gate Transit to see if we can get some additional bus service, since we're going to have a captive audience there to use it. And the people who developed that expect to do a shuttle of some sort into town. So that's the kind of thing that can be done in order to combine the goal of having housing for people with somehow mitigating the traffic. But especially, we need to work on getting people out of the single occupancy cars, as we talked about.
Yeah, and just as with parking places, I mean, the traffic is, I don't think traffic is going to be solved by legalizing existing second units, because actually there's people already living there. It might solve some state numbers, but that's kind of a temporary solution at best. I mean, traffic is bad now, and really we've got to think outside of the box. I mean, with Safe Routes to Schools, that's something that we did. 27% of morning traffic was people driving their kids to school before we started that program. Now it's lots less. We can use the same approach to other, people are commuting, people are trying to get around, they're generally driving cars by themselves. And I think that there's a multiple-pronged approach that can help with that. I mean, it's not going to make it perfect, but we can do the best we can with multiple tools, such as ride-sharing.
So we must assure that we have adequate and affordable housing. We can achieve the objectives by protecting our existing cost-effective housing stock and also looking for additional appropriately scaled units. It's not all about second units, but we should provide streamlining for an amnesty for grandfathering in illegal units, for streamlining and making ministerial decisions for second and junior units, and we're working on that now. But I will say this, is we also need to look at infill approaches for moderate density housing, lower scale. We're not looking at wind cups, but that's what Victory Village was, and that's what Bennett House was, which was approved in the 80s. 3 stories, 70 units for affordable senior housing. We need to look at those opportunities. We have opportunity sites identified in our housing element that are infill approaches.
All right, we have time for one more question. Do you guys have one more question?
Anybody have?
I have one.
So this would be
And
for
Deborah will start first.
How would you promote fiscal responsibility and transparency?
I would suggest a commission, a public outreach commission, try to get volunteers on it. I would also, the software that our finance director is using is 12 years old. It's impossible to look, for a person to look into it. I have tried, I've requested information from the town staff. I've spent many hours of my own time researching by going into archives what is going on with the money in our town. I would say some new software, and I would have the books to be completely open on the website so that any one of us could go in and see how our money is being spent. I think a lot of it's being wasted on projects that are bought and paid for before the people know about them. I think it's really important to get the word out to the people, and then they're stopped.
Well, I will say I think the town is being fiscally responsible. We have the leanest staff of any municipality in the county, and I think we do things pretty efficiently. Similar to what we were talking about earlier about just the people digging in their heels and having a hard time making decisions, the same sort of solutions of being able to just get information out in a clear way. I'm not sure that having the books online to where people can look at them directly is going to do people very much good, but some trust, just some trust would relieve that, because I don't really think there's an issue of fiscal irresponsibility in Fairfax. I think what the issue would be, if there is any, is trust. I think we're doing all right.
Having overseen the books here for 8 years, we do run a pretty lean ship. We do more than with less than any other town in the county, and we do a lot of stuff with volunteer things too. We have gone to great lengths to make our accounting much simpler and easier to understand, and actually working within our means. And basically the new software is extremely expensive, and it relies on a lot of data sets that frankly aren't there. We've looked at some of the stuff, like it's in Sausalito right now, and we don't have that much money to spare on that, and if the data isn't there to put into that software, we can't do it. But I think, as Bruce says, trust is important, and frankly, I have the trust. We have a great finance director, and makes time available for everybody. Thanks.
Absolutely.
So we made our budgets available online, and our finance director makes every effort to make things more transparent and more available, as we all do as council members. We have a very lean staff. We have the lowest per capita employees per any Marin town, but we also are the only town that provide 24/7 community policing. And one of the things I do is I'm kind of a hawk on the budget. I'm always watching to make sure that we're not spending more money than we need to. Probably a cheapskate is a better term. But what we need to do is really be very judicious. We have a small budget. We have a lot of expenses that we need to do. And one of the things we do, because we have so few staff, if we had very judicious use of consultants only where we need specialized expertise, so we don't have to pick up the other benefits for just a specific project. Thank you, Greg.
I think our budget, I've looked at those over the last several years. I think they can have more definitions in them and have them easier to be read by the residents so that they understand more of what is in the budget. That would be helpful. I think the other item that I would ask for is the council does a budget workshop every year before the new budget, and that's done during the workday, and I know that saves money for the town, but I think those budget workshops need to be done in the evening or on a weekend so that the community can come in and listen and get a better understanding of the budget. Thank you.
All right, I think that's it for our questions. Thank you all for Fairfax. And next up is San Anselmo.
It's gotta be flying.
2-minute opening, yeah.
I think that was a good set.
Yeah.
You're the
Fairfax
proxy.
is always, yeah, Fairfax is always interesting.
Hi. You're going to need to turn your microphone on. There you go. I think everybody else is set. Okay. Oh, I should introduce, apparently we now have an assistant timekeeper.
Thank goodness.
Next,
That girl Ruth.
thank you for Ruth Carter.
Thank you.
And if you didn't hear me, that's Ruth Carter. So are we ready? Are you ready? Okay, Brian, you get to start. 2-minute opening.
Good evening. My name is Brian Colbert. I've done a variety of things in my life. I've been a corporate attorney on Wall Street. I've lived in Turkey teaching international law. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 20 years. I've run a chocolate company, a VoIP company. I currently run a specialized health and wellness practice in San Francisco. I moved to Marin in 2013, and I've been head of the San Anselmo Economic Development Committee since 2014. The one thing that animates me for this race, it's interesting, people say these are turbulent times. You know, I think there's always time for action, which is why I think I'm an entrepreneur. But the reason that animates me is sitting out there in the audience. She's 7 years old. She attends public school in San Anselmo at Wade Thomas. Her name is Layla. And I want to make the world a better place for her, which is why I'm doing this with the support of my loving wife, Nihal, who is my campaign manager. So that's really what sort of is motivating and moving me. I'm really happy to be here tonight because my wife and I tell Layla to beat all comers, man, woman, octopus, bear, whatever it is, but we're also cognizant that there will be special challenges she will face as a woman. And so I'm cognizant of that, and I'm excited to be here and speak to this particular group. Finally, I've received the endorsement of the firefighters, and I've received the endorsement of 20 very active stakeholders in the San Anselmo community. I'm a political newcomer, but I think that shows that I've got the vision and I've connected with people who live here. Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity to earn your recommendation tonight. My name is Steve Berto. I see many friends out there in the audience. Since the moment I moved to San Anselmo, I became active in my community. I have a passion and a belief in local government, and so I wanted to get involved early. I first got involved with civic organizations such as Sustainable San Anselmo, looking at how we could become a more sustainable community. After getting my feet wet with civic engagement, I stepped up my engagement as a member of the Parks and Rec Commission, where I've served for the last 6 years. During that time, I've played an instrumental role in maintaining our parks and our recreational facilities and our programs, and was instrumental in bringing a skate park to Memorial Park to give our kids a safe place to skate and to scoot. I've also served on the Community Facilities Master Plan Advisory Committee and the current Memorial Park Advisory Plan Board. That's a weird one. I have a strong track record of bringing diverse stakeholders together to address complex issues. In terms of this race, I am incredibly honored to have built a coalition of support that includes the Marin firefighters, the Marin Democratic Party, the Sierra Club, SEIU 10 to 1, and I would hope by the end of this night to have earned your recommendation as well. I've spent a number of my years in professional work working for women's causes. Prior to being a public information officer for Contra Costa County, I worked for a women-owned business here in San Rafael, Kathleen Russell Consulting, where we represented women candidates and women causes and scored huge victories at the federal, state, and local levels for women and children. And I'd be remiss not to say that we're missing somebody in the room tonight, a good friend of ours. He would have been sitting right there. His name was Ed Voris. Ed was somebody who really, as a man, represented the ideals of this group. And that's something that I hope to do and be a strong advocate for you and for women.
Hello, I am not Kay Coleman. My name is Jessica Rising, and I'm here because Kay is representing Marin up in the League of California Cities Convention in Sacramento. I'm going to talk a little bit about Kay. She's been a citizen of San Anselmo for over 45 years. She and her husband Carter raised their children, their 2 sons there. She was a teacher. She spent 10 years as a community resources director working for the city. She began working on women's campaigns in Marin and kind of caught the bug and served on various San Anselmo commissions, and then in 2009 decided to run for town council, was re-elected in 2013. She was mayor in 2013, and she's the present mayor right now. She is running again for 2017. I'm going to talk a little bit about issues in stability because I won't be able to answer your questions. Financial stability is very important to her, such as budget and pension analysis. Homelessness and affordable housing is also important. Infrastructure and public safety, such as preserving assets, replacing pipes and roads, and safe roads for bicyclists and pedestrians and cars, and support for police and fire. Flood mitigation, preserving parks and open space, economic vitality of businesses in downtown, cannabis. She's up there learning about cannabis right now in Sacramento. I want to say that I feel that the strongest point about Kay is her community-based governance and engagement. She's more than just meetings and giving her opinion. It's about showing up and asking, what do you think? She shows up to community-oriented events. She shows up at 6:45 in the morning, 100 degrees for 1-year anniversaries for businesses. She supports the leadership program at Drake High, which she actually started. And it really is community-based for her, including the fact that she had a young girl come and throw out the first pitch for the Pacific's baseball game instead of her being about her. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm John Wright. I'm really honored to be here tonight. I have kind of an interesting background because I made the transition from many, many years of school board service to the town council in San Anselmo in 2013. I was, when we first moved out to San Anselmo, my wife and I, with 3 sons, was about 27 years ago. I threw myself in very quickly to community volunteerism. It started with the Cub Scouts, actually. I have 3 boys, so I didn't do Indian princesses. But that quickly got into school tax campaigns, school parcel tax and bond campaigns, which were quite critical out in our area. So I spent 17 years, 5 with the Ross Valley Board and 12 with the Tam High School District. I really enjoyed community service, made the transition in 2013 to the town council. I've been on the town council for now 4 years. I'm serving right now on the Police Council, Economic Development Committee, along with Brian. I'm proud of my helping to found, and I'm now the co-leader of our Coalition Connection, which is our community coalition to combat drug and alcohol abuse among youth, which is a very big issue in Marin County. I'm very anxious to continue working for the town. There's a lot of difficult issues. It's not glamorous being on a small town council. We only rarely get in the newspaper. It's pretty hard work bringing people together, and I've got a track record, I think, of significant accomplishments in that regard, including community parks, working on our tax measure for roads, and I'd like to continue that work for the next 3 years in our case.
Great. Questions?
Yes. Okay. Brian, there are widely differing opinions in your town about flood control measures. Do you agree that this is a problem that affects both your city and its neighboring cities? And how can you craft and implement solutions when the differences of opinion are so charged?
I think the difference of opinion goes to one set of issues, which is essentially sort of about detention basins. But I sort of found a commonality among folks in San Anselmo that they're frustrated by the lack of action. I said this last week. They just don't understand the constant set of meetings, the constant flood fee, and the fact that there doesn't seem to be, for lack of a better phrase, any shovels on the ground or any chance for anything to be fixed. So I think San Anselmoans, unless they're sort of looking to the county to sort of be able to sort of say, we are an effective framework for action, actually looking for me to come on council and say, what can we as a town actually effectuate, while at the same time seeking to partner with other towns. So my focus is, what can we actually do to continue working with other towns, but what can we get done in my next 3 years? Because that's what they're looking to me to do, and that's what I want to do.
So, it's a lot easier to have the conversation when you get the elephant out of the room. And now that the Memorial Park detention basin is off the table, we need to really look for what we could do to take action now. I think at this point, what we're looking at, what we could do as San Anselmo, is more towards addressing the 15-year, the 25-year flood events. Detention basins and the network of plans that, was put forth through Flood Zone 9, that's a broader plan looking to address the 100-year flood event, which we need to do. But I really think that there are things we could do right now, working with our neighbors and working with the town's engineers, to not only implement flood reform, but better engage our community. The town of San Anselmo just purchased Peak Democracy, which is a new online platform that helps small local governments or any local government communicate better with their constituencies. It reflects the elements of the Brown Act and the Public Records Act, so you could essentially have community engagement online.
I want to answer, but I can't.
I think Kay has been a great supporter of flood control, so I think we support her. I think actually you'll find on this issue there's probably not a lot of difference among the candidates. I'm going to agree with the others that we probably have to set our sights a bit lower because the public simply isn't going to accept the kind of disruption that's going to be needed to achieve the original plan of 100-year protection. That required detention basins, and projects that we thought were sort of no-brainers, like Phoenix Lake, can't be done. So we're going to have to set our sights lower. And I think I would agree with what has been said, that we need to focus on achievable projects within the plan. I don't want to divert from the plan that's out there, but I think we need to focus on things that people can see on the ground. And I know Kay would agree with that.
Thank you.
This one came from the audience. I've been dying to bring it on some unsuspecting souls. And the writer says, since there are only 6 or so firefighters, paramedics in Marin that are women, what can you do to allow more than 6 women firefighters, paramedics in Marin County?
Steve?
Well, I think certainly I support women in government, women in any profession, and, has spent a good amount of my professional career and my personal time advocating for those causes. I think I have a very good entree to have a discussion with the firefighters about this being one of their endorsed candidates. I think, to me, it all comes down to communication. I'm a communications professional, and I always think that the best way to address issues is to sit down and talk to people, find the commonalities, bring people together. Like I said, I have a strong track record of bringing diverse stakeholders together to work on and address complex issues. And I don't think this is any different. I think what we need to do is, though, we need to start young. We need to start just like the Goldie Blocks program, getting young girls involved in engineering and public safety and stuff like that at a very young age, because that's where it's going to spring up to the top.
All right, I'll go. I'm currently on the police council, and we actually have a pretty good increasing number of women in the police force, which is, I'm encouraged by that. I'm very supportive of more efforts to recruit and train women for firefighting positions. I think it's been harder for lots of different reasons. Again, I think the police in our community have been successful in attracting women. I know that, and there are certainly many communities that have been successful in attracting women, so I would be quite supportive of that. I would agree with the remarks I think Steve made earlier, that having more women involved in things like paramedic services or any fire-related services would be a great thing. Women are quite able to perform those services, and I would be very much in favor of doing everything we can to promote that.
So there's one woman in the department right now, and it's an interesting question. And the first thing I would want to ask is, well, are there no women because they're not applying, or because the standards aren't reflective of the ability of the work that needs to be done? I think in general, retention right now for our firefighters and other service workers are incredibly challenging, just in general. So I wouldn't be surprised that, in sort of, right now there's 2 openings in the department. If the department says we can't find man or woman due to cost of living or transportation. So to me, it's sort of a global problem, and then you sort of look at it, and then you drill down into the numbers and say, are you receptive to all qualified applicants? If not, let's address that. So it's a question I'm certainly worth asking and exploring more. Thanks.
How will you utilize good methods to enhance environmental protection, promote green energy, and lessen gas emissions?
That would be to me. Well, I'm proud that San Anselmo has a multi-year climate action plan, actually, that I've supported since I've been on the council now for 4 years, that looks to not only promote, we do what we can to promote public transit, but we also try to promote use of deep green. The town is on deep green, and we have done a number of things in the town to encourage citizens to choose deep green in their selection with Marin Clean Energy. So we're doing a lot of things in town right now. We have a sustainability committee that is quite active, that I've been very supportive of, that has for a number of years been looking at exactly those issues, to do it at not only at the town level but also at the citizen level, and I'm very supportive of those efforts.
Well, for a long time, my wife and I only owned one car, and our second car is an electric car. So we're doing as best we can as a family. I have to say, from a larger issue, I support the climate action plan of San Anselmo. If I'm on council, it'll come up again, and I expect to support it. The biggest problem right now that California faces in reducing greenhouse gases are transportation. Like that's the big thing in dealing with cars. And so I'm actually a huge fan of driverless cars because I think it'll make transportation more efficient. And I'm a big fan of melding that with electric cars, because I think once you sort of make driverless cars, meld them with electric cars, all of a sudden your traffic patterns become much more manageable, much more efficient, and you're taking carbon-based emissions off the road. The real question is can you do that at a material rate over the next 20 to 30 years? And that's really a technological question that we're all struggling to try and answer.
What we need to do is continue to be a leader. San Anselmo was one of the first municipalities in Marin to go deep green. We were one of the first to form our Quality of Life Commission looking at sustainability issues. Like John and Brian, I certainly support the Climate Action Plan. I think it's a very forward-thinking document that really addresses and takes a practical look at how San Anselmo can move into the future at a sustainable rate. I also agree with John and Brian about what we need to do about transportation. I think that east-west corridor in Marin, particularly for Fairfax and San Anselmo, is very, very tricky. You've heard, if you live in the Ross Valley, you've heard over the years the trolley. We should bring the trolley back. I think we've looked at that. It's not necessarily a viable plan. I think what we need to do is better public transit with smaller vehicles that are more conducive to our community, smarter vehicles that are greener, whether they be electric, hybrid. We need to find a better way to move our people around and get them out of the cars. We're not doing a good job at that right now, and this is another area where San Anselmo can continue to be a leader. Thank you.
Okay, Brian. Has the downtown business community fully recovered from the devastating flooding of a few years ago? What can you do to help it thrive and grow?
So I think we're in a retail apocalypse in this country, and that downtowns will never be as vibrant as they were in the 1950s. So I think you need to sort of look at larger trends. I'm on the Economic Development Committee. I'm the chair, and I work with John. I think there's a short-term and a longer-term solution. I think the short-term solution is wayfinding. That is to say, is there a way to direct people to downtown and to direct them to parking? We've done some quantitative and qualitative surveys which show that both customers and merchants expect folks to walk about 3 blocks. So I think that's something that we can do, and that's executable. We can do in the short term. Longer term, I think public space is what really drives engagement downtown, public space coupled with experience in restaurants. And I think that kind of entrepreneurial, forward-seeking vision and voice and ability to execute on that kind of stuff will create a climate and atmosphere where entrepreneurs will want to come and consumers will want to engage with them.
I think if we're going to make sure that our downtown remains economically viable, we need to first address flooding. There are a lot of factors that a business would consider before coming into a community, and when you look at the insurance and the liability factors from flooding, that's something that weighs hugely in a business owner's decision as to whether to come here or as whether to stay or leave. I think that we need to give our businesses a vote of confidence by doing something about flooding so that they know that they're not going to have to count on closing their doors every winter on days that they weren't planned. I also think that the other thing we need to do that we really really, really do well as a community is continue to do our events. As a member of the Parks and Rec Commission, I see very clearly what happens when we have our events. We bring people into town. We have Country Fair Day coming up on the 24th of this month, which I'd love all of you to come to. Come patronize our businesses. This is on a Sunday, and on those days, businesses are usually closed. They make the decision to come to open on those days because they know we're bringing people into town. Thank you.
Well, I think there's a very close relationship between the flood issues and the viability of the downtown. There are many macro issues, as Brian has mentioned, and we're doing a lot of things under Brian's great leadership on that committee to try to do what we can. But on flooding, I think the community is split because we've got people that fear that by even advertising the existence of flooding, that's going to scare people away, as if to deny reality is somehow the best approach. I don't agree with that. Others, but I think people that I've talked to and business people that I've talked to have clearly indicated that the risk of flooding is a deterrent. And so we need to do something about it. I've detected in my campaign walking so far a lot of frustration about the inability to move forward, and there's some very concrete things that we need to do downtown, which may involve changing the downtown quite a bit, and we need to do that.
See how much time
We have time for 2 more questions.
Time for 2 more questions? Okay. What skills or experience do you have in effecting compromises, or more importantly, bringing people in a group to a consensus?
Steve.
We have a really great example right now, and John and Brian can also share in this, and as can Kay, frankly. At the Memorial Park Master Plan Advisory Committee, we started with a plan. Now that the detention basin's off the table, we need to address the irrigation issues and the safety issues at the park. We have 2 plans on the table. One is a fix in place, one is a more robust update of Memorial Park. When we started with the first plan, people from the log cabin, people from the skate park community, people from the tennis community came out and said, we do not support this. We do not like what you're doing. We went out, we talked with them, we listened to them, we brought them to the table. We now have a plan that it's going to be coming to our Parks and Rec Commission this coming Tuesday night. Every one of those people that was in opposition to it is planning to turn out to the Parks and Rec Commission meeting on Tuesday night and speak in favor of the project. That's what I talk about when we talk about bringing diverse stakeholders together to address complex issues. There were a lot of compromises made here, but what we wound up with was a product that our entire community supports.
The specific thing I'd like to point to is the 15 years that I spent out in our community working with, while I was on the Ross Valley Board and the TAM Board, in getting the Red Hill Community Park built right behind the Red Hill Shopping Center. That was a very, very lengthy process involving a pretty good amount of contention, needing to navigate multiple agencies. I was kind of in a unique position to get that done because I sort of bridged the school-town divide, and we were able to get money from the county. We got school bond money to build that park. I'm honored that the community put my name on the field. It's now the John Wright Field, and so 100 years from now, assuming the field isn't flooded, at least the name will be there. I'll be long gone, but that'll be a wonderful accomplishment that I'll always be proud of.
Me? So the park is interesting, and I'm glad to be a part of it, but from my perspective, it's still at the planning stage, so I'm not really super excited about it right now. I would say I have a track record of entrepreneurial success, either be it on Wall Street or as a small business, and that means bringing a whole variety of stakeholders together, being the rest of the executive team, the investors, other sort of folks. I think the other unique thing that I can bring is a real different sense of perspective. I mean, I lived in Turkey for 3.5 years in a city of 3.5 million people, where my wife and I didn't know anyone and didn't know the language, and I had to work with my department and my students. And I think it's really an ability that I've had and learned to be able to sort of work and cultivate relationships and sort of getting us all working together.
Okay, what are the two most important issues that you see facing San Anselmo, and how would you rectify them?
That's me. Well, both of these issues, I think, fall under the broader heading of infrastructure. I mentioned that being on a small town council is not glamorous. It's very grueling and very gritty. Our significant issues are very severely declined infrastructure, buildings. We have a park that needs a lot of work. Getting people to believe that is is difficult. Flood control, again, is another, in my mind, infrastructure issue. I think that because it's going to require a lot of patience, money. Some of the money is there, some's not there. So I think the multiple infrastructure issues around road improvements, getting medians improved, things that are people want them, but they don't realize that they cost money. So convincing people of that need and getting them to tax themselves if necessary that's going to be the biggest challenge, I think, in the next few years.
So I think there's actually one challenge which I look through two prisms. And we've all talked this evening about the various challenges, and which I also think are actually opportunities facing San Anselmo. And the first is really, how do you engage the populace in a democracy? How are you able to connect with people and provide leadership so that at the end of the day, I'm not looking for total consensus, but I'm looking for legitimacy around the process, so that people say, you know what, this might not be what I want, but I understand it, let's move on. So coupled with that is, I think one of the most important things I bring is an ability to connect with young families. The demographics of San Anselmo are changing, and these families are particularly disconnected. When they look at the budget, they don't come to the budget. They think there's piles of money lying around, and I think it's important to be able to have a realistic, honest conversation and say, this is where the money's going, and if you want to participate and all move together in town, then this is how you need to participate. Thank you.
In terms of the two biggest issues, I would say I agree with John. Infrastructure as a small town, it's really going to be, the biggest issue most of the time. And when I say infrastructure, I do group flood mitigation into that, because flood mitigation, a big portion of that is done through infrastructure. The other issue that I would put out there and is very important to me is public safety. And I'm a very strong advocate, working in public safety to ensure that our public safety providers have the tools to keep us safe when we need them the most. There was a question asked earlier tonight about Fairfax and what happens in the hills. We have the same exact issue in San Anselmo. We need to make sure that we have good plans and that our public safety providers, our fire, our police, our paramedics are able to get to the people most in need when they need it most. That, in any community, I will tell you, is probably going to be one of the most paramount issues, and I would be a strong advocate for ensuring that our public safety providers have the tools to keep everybody in our community safe.
Well, that wraps us up with San Anselmo. Thank you all. Thank you, Jessica, for sitting in for Kay. And now it's time for Novato.
This is one, and this is one. I'd like to take that one.
Which one, that one?
Whatever percent. You see any of that interest?
These are big chairs.
Maybe Novato needs bigger chairs.
Yeah, and they're warm.
Timekeepers, you ready? Okay. We'll start with Kevin. 2-minute opening statement.
Alrighty, well, my past is pretty well known around Novato, so I'm delighted to be able to expose my past to you here in Marin. My mom's family arrived in the late 1800s. They were farmers and ranchers. There's still a Palladini Road out in Novato. My dad arrived at Hamilton in the 1940s. Me, in addition to spending my whole life here, I was a volunteer at the Novato History Museum for a bunch of years. And my point in mentioning all of this is that I'm a big fan of history. An election makes us all appreciate our history, as well as what's happening right now. We figure out what we like, we figure out what we don't like, and it gets us thinking about our future. And that's why I'm here. This election in Novato is a big deal. 5-year terms for the winners, the opportunity to shape the future with the new general plan. I know I'm new to politics in Novato, but I think I can bring a lot of advantages. Decades working as a consultant with clients in Silicon Valley mean that I have a fresh perspective and some very 21st century ideas that can help Novato. For instance, I promise to work with everyone it takes to revitalize our downtown. I'll help reopen the Novato Theater. I'll bring free Wi-Fi to downtown at little or no cost to the city. Our council needs to improve community relations. I hope to help that effort because I've done it before with big companies and institutions who make Novato City Council look like children on the playground singing together. I'm committed to environmental leadership, fighting for affordable housing, improved transit, better senior transit. At the same time, I'll work with the community to craft a new general plan. Thank you.
My name is Pat Eklund. I'm currently serving on the Novato City Council as a city council member, and I'm a former mayor as well. I am running for re-election on the Novato City Council to protect the best parts about living in Novato and to make them even better. I've always been in love with our wonderful quality of life, our strong sense of community, and also our small town character. I believe that we need leaders who understand the budget, city finances, and who have a proven track record of making tough decisions and standing up for our values. I have a long record as an advocate, making sure that government is working for all of us. My 4 overarching goals are, first, to maintain the small town character and uniqueness of our neighborhoods, our parks, and our open space. Secondly, to stay focused on the most important priorities, and there's no more important priority than public safety and environmental protection. Third, focus on really creating higher paying jobs in Novato by building on the biotech, video gaming, and high-tech industries that have made Novato their home. Lastly, to continue the environmental efforts that improve our quality of life by establishing a green policy for green purchasing and contracting, strengthening our buy local policy, establishing a stronger integrated pest management program, and dark skies initiatives. I started with expanding our curbside recycling program, green building ordinance. I initiated our urban growth boundary in 1997, and again initiated it this year, which is on the November ballot. And as some of you know, I started in public service by fighting City Hall over a stop sign in my neighborhood. Since then, I've fought much bigger battles to preserve the quality of life. I love this city, and I'm prepared to keep fighting even when it means taking on business as usual.
Denise would have loved to be here, but is president of the North Bay Division of the League of California Cities and is at a 3-day conference in Sacramento this evening with many duties. I am her proxy, Jean McLamey, and will be reading her statement in her voice. I've loved serving our community. I feel responsibility deeply, but also have immense joy of being able to make a difference every day. As servants of the community, we are expected to be thoughtful, inclusive, and work to develop sensible, sustainable actions that prioritize Novato's future. We must be proactive in creating solutions that support all of our community and define a path forward that both protects our character and remains strong enough to withstand the uncertainty ahead. I have and will continue to fight to keep our heritage and the unique character we cherish. I have and will continue to encourage long-term solutions that are fiscally prudent and environmentally sustainable. I have and will continue to reach into the community, invite engagement, and not only listen, but incorporate feedback, because I believe that collaboration leads to better answers. Our nation and our planet face real challenges, and our small town is impacted by events and circumstances over which we have little control. So most importantly, we need to be working together in order to define our density, a future that reflects and preserves our values, both builds on and creates opportunities, and can remain flexible and strong for generations. Thank you for everything you do for our community to make it better, your time tonight, and the trust and partnership you've shared with me. And please remember, my door is open and I want to hear from you. I would be honored to continue to serve on the Novato City Council. I've been endorsed by the Marin Democrats and Sierra Club and would appreciate your endorsement this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, this is a question from the audience. What are your goals to work with the Novato City Council to create a united council rather than the much-seen 2-3 split?
You know, one of the things that I bring to the corporate world is team building skills. That's one of the things that people ask for all the time. How are we going to make this work? We have so many different constituencies, the old folks, the new folks, the folks in between. So I would like to think, and in fact I would like to promise, that one of the things I can bring to the Novato City Council is a sense of cooperation, whether that comes from an ability to phrase the question and reach across the proverbial aisle to make sure that there is an understanding, or whether that means actually standing up and saying, hey, I'm new to this. Help me understand what the options are, and let's work together to figure out how to achieve the best solution for Novato. I think having someone who's new and having someone who can say, I'm ready to figure this out together with you, will be the biggest thing I can contribute.
I've been on the city council for 22 years, and over most of those years, the council has deliberated. You know, there's strength in a decision when you have differences of opinion and you try to pick and put together a very strong decision incorporating a lot of the comments and the input from all of the council members. For some reason this year, we are not deliberating. There's a motion and a second and then a vote. And it has resulted in a split vote of 3-2, sometimes 4-1, and sometimes 3-2 the other way. It's really, I believe, important for council members and the public. We need to listen to one another. Not just listen, but listen to hear. Hear what the person is saying and trying to empathize and to bring that into the deliberation. As a manager at EPA, I helped a lot in negotiating between tribal nations, which I'll talk about in the next question if it comes up.
My turn for a question. Okay.
Must be frustrating.
That's one or this one. Okay. Given that Novato's sale tax was cut by a great 0.25%, give concrete examples of how you will raise funds for Novato.
Novato has a structural deficit. We also have, unfortunately, we collect the lowest property tax in all the cities in Marin County. We only get 7 cents on the dollar, where Mill Valley, for an example, gets 26 cents on the dollar. San Anselmo gets 23 cents on the dollar. So in 2010, we did pass Measure F, which was a 5-year measure, and we had a lot of money left over. We were very, very selective on how we spent that. And then, yes, in 2015, we did initiate a ballot measure for only a 0.25 cent. But I believe that we can spend within our means. And but I think that we need to do higher paying jobs, bringing in those companies, and then also build our downtown so that we can increase some of the sales tax that we are currently getting from our downtown, which is really not enough. But if we're able to build a downtown like Petaluma has, we'd be able to get more sales tax as well from that.
I'm a big fan of yes. I'm a big fan of change and doing things new. When you get a chance to say yes, when you get a chance to do something as opposed to doing nothing, you actually get to see what works and what doesn't. We've had a lot of, well, not much happening in downtown for 20 some odd years now. I feel like we can grow ourselves out of any perspective deficit, call it structural if you want, but any perspective deficit that we have doesn't take into account the consideration that downtown is ripe for renewal. We're going to get the Novato Theater reopened. We're going to get some excellent mixed use into the Peony building. We're going to be able to look at the opportunity to have at least one hotel, which would bring some TOT tax into our coffers in a big way and continue to grow our ability to spend wisely on Novato's future.
Pre-existing money is not enough to repair last year's flood damage and to promote upgrade protection and pumps and levees. Do you support the Nevada flood tax measure, and do you like the idea of a toll for Highway 37?
So the flood tax measure is just a small amount to pay. It's $1 a week, and the short answer is yes, we need to do that. I don't know that there should be much debate about it. In terms of supporting reopening or rebuilding Highway 37, the interchange there, well, that's a $4 billion project, and I don't think Novato, as much as I'm an optimist and I'm a yes guy, but I don't think we're going to raise $4 billion out of Novato. That's actually something that's going to happen with California, with Novato working in a supporting role, but it's not rocket science. It's elevating the roadway, building better drainage, putting in bigger engines to eliminate water from the drains, and that's what we're going to do.
Tell me when to start, Greg. Okay, great. Measure E is going to help Novato. It's going to only give us, unfortunately, 20% of the money that is raised to be able to make infrastructure improvements within the town. In a briefing that we got at the council, most of the money is going to be used to dealing with the levees and to help with climate change and wetland restoration. But I think it's a step in the right direction. Highway 37, I've been attending every single meeting since UC Davis was hired by Caltrans to look at the statistics of how much Highway 37 has been sinking. And I have come to the realization, in my opinion, that we need to approach this far differently than the way we've been approaching it in the past. This is not only a transportation project, it is also an environmental project as well. And I've talked with environmental groups. We need to really focus that this is a wetland restoration project. And I do not support a toll road. I believe that we need to do a bridge and leave Highway 37 alone. Oh, do a bridge from Infinity to Vallejo.
Okay, Pat, what do you think your city can do about the need for affordable housing and workforce housing in Marin?
No, Greg, tell me when to start. Novato has done more than any other city in Marin County. We have 600 affordable housing units at Hamilton, and that was part of the base closure. Half of it is rental and half of it is ownership. We also did Homeward Bound, which is an 80-bed homeless facility with 24 apartments. It's sort of like a transition out of homelessness. And we did Next Key, which is also a training facility for the homeless. And lastly, we approved 14 single-family homes for women that have children that were homeless. So Novato's done the most than any other city. We've done senior housing that's affordable. We have a 20% inclusionary zoning requirement. which is huge. We're one of the few cities in Marin County that has that, not only for ownership, but also for rental. We've done Habitat for Humanities, but we can't stop there. That's why we did junior units and also accessory dwellings as well.
It's really hard for me to imagine that we've done enough for affordable housing in Novato, much like we haven't done enough for affordable housing everywhere in Marin. So when I suggest that we haven't done enough, that there's more to do, I'm talking about some really tough things that people don't like to hear. They don't necessarily want to hear that we can do infill housing in downtown Novato, where there's lots of transportation and ability to work for people who want to live downtown. We also have an ability to work within our city to reduce fees, to rezone, to do the kinds of support that hasn't been done, to reach out from the city to make housing, whether it's granny units that are going to be legalized or built, or rezoning to give people the ability to build higher density housing out in our, away from our downtown. All of that is possible and welcome.
Do we have time for one more?
You have time for two more.
What? One more? You have one more?
You have one more.
Oh, dear.
We could make up a question.
No. I'm just going to ask you a very general question. What do you perceive as being the most important issue / problem facing your city, and how do you intend to deal with it as a council member?
So our biggest problem as a city is downtown. I think anybody who's been to downtown Novato recognizes that it has seen better days. It's been 20 plus years that downtown has been going downhill. The theater's been closed since 1991. We had a major downtown building close and stay closed for 13 years. It finally got sold. We haven't had any good jobs providers coming into downtown in a lot of years, and sometimes we hear that there's danger of our second biggest employer not getting what it needs to stay in Novato. So if we can revitalize downtown with some sensible plans to do so, including reopening the theater and bring jobs to downtown, including maintaining the jobs we have, we're going to be in good shape for the future, but that's the biggest problem.
Greg, tell me when. Great. I want to focus more on the opportunities. The opportunity before Novato really is Redwood Boulevard. And Redwood Boulevard is wider than Junipero, which is an issue, which is a problem, because it really separates our downtown, it separates our community. And so we've done a lot of charrettes, and one of the things that the community said is that we want to grow the downtown. We want to grow the downtown north so that we can have walkable and bikeable communities and with retail shopping. Novato's done a lot for our downtown. We spent $13 million from the Hamilton redevelopment money in order to completely resurface the Grant Avenue from Railroad all the way down to 7th Street. We've also been funding our Downtown Business Association, and we actually bought the Downtown Theater. And we worked with two separate groups to begin to restore the Downtown Theater. And there's a lot more that Novato can do, and I look forward to continuing that work.
Frida, do you have anything?
SMART has started, but there is no shuttle from the station to downtown. An audience member asked why not.
That's a very good question, because in the environmental impact report, SMART was supposed to do all those mitigation measures, which include shuttles, and be able to get people from their jobs to SMART. We are working with Marin Transit to actually help improve some of the access to the SMART stations, even though that was really SMART's responsibility. Most cities are having to do that right now. So we're hoping that Marin Transit is going to be able to have better access so that people can go from the 3 smart stations that we're going to have to their employers, and also hopefully to be able to shop and enjoy our community.
Part of the divisiveness spoken about earlier on the Novato City Council came from SMART, the downtown SMART station, and SMART overall. There was a division between people who wanted to support SMART, plan for it, make sure it was a success, and those who were uncertain that it was going to work and were cautious to the point of doing very little to make sure it had the support it needed. But beyond SMART, I think we need to look at some really different ideas to how to provide transportation for people. You may have heard about Lyft and its programs in cities around the country to do things like bring pregnant women to hospitals and to clinics and doctors using Lyft with a subsidized service, or a new smart Lyft partnership. It's actually not smart, it's Marin. We could do that in Novato too.
All right, that's all the time we have for Novato. Thank you all. Thank you, Jean, for stepping in for Denise.
Thank you very much.
We're down to our last one, and there's only one for Tiburon. Holly Thier, come on down. Yes, you get to sit dead center.
Thank you. Good question. Thanks.
So when you're ready, I think Greg's ready. You have a 2-minute opening statement.
Great. I want to thank you very much for having me here tonight. Right now, I know I'm supposed to talk about myself and my election, but there's something else I want to cover first, and that is, right now, with Donald Trump in the White House, we are seeing women's rights being whittled away. We are seeing things that we've worked for over the last 100 and 200 years be decimated. When I look out at each and every one of you, I just want to say thank you for working on the Marin Women's Political Action Committee and trying to stem that tide. Because when Planned Parenthood is defunded and young women or women that may not want to talk to their parents about something cannot get reproductive services, cannot get an abortion, that is when, I'm not sure where we're all going to move. So I just wanted to start out with that. I have 1 minute left. My name's Holly Thier. I'm running for town council in Tiburon. I had the great fortune to be appointed. I was in a competition with 22 other people. I got one of 2 appointments to the town council. Now that appointment goes through December. You're saying, why is she running? Because for the next 3 years, we have to run, and November 7th is that election. I'm being challenged by two men, and I'm the only woman in the race.
Thank you. Let's see. Well, for Tiburon, maybe, what do you think your city can do about the need for affordable and workforce housing in Marin?
Yes, actually, there's a lot that the town has done in the past, and a lot that the town is doing. There's several sites within Tiburon right now that are being looked at for workforce housing. Like many communities in Marin, we have a challenge, which is that our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers cannot afford to live in Tiburon. So right now, the school district is actually working with the town, and we've identified certain areas where we can have affordable can have workforce housing. There's also a move to do affordable housing. The town does not own any land that we can build on. So what we are doing is working with private developers and trying to get them to build affordable housing. There's a project over Shark's Deli right now. It's a very small project where I think there may be proposed now 4 to 6 units, but we're looking at trying to get 25% affordable, which is, what we're trying to do.
Well, I can't read the handwriting. When you write your cards, please.
Do you want me to, I have really bad handwriting, so I can read anyone's handwriting.
What property?
Oh, the Martha property.
Martha property.
Martha property. Reach a solution.
What was the question?
What will you do to help reach a solution on the Martha property that is in the news now?
Right, so I've already been working on the Martha property. For those of you who don't know what that is, the Martha property is probably the last large piece of open space. And unfortunately, the town does not own it. It is owned by private parties. Right now, they're trying to get the entitlements before the county. So it's a very challenging situation because we can't control what's going to happen. But when you look at Tiburon, you all see that beautiful ridge line when you're, I don't know, at Angel Island, or if you're across the bay, or even just looking up. And it's right on, almost on the ridge line that they want to build houses. So I'm already working with it was called the Last Chance Committee, but now it's the Open Space Committee. And this fight has gone on for over 30 years. So I am coming in to try to help them. My personal goal is to see someone like the Trust for Public Lands purchase the property, and I'm very hopeful that that will happen so that we could keep it as, oh, stop, sorry.
Ask her another question about Martha property.
I'm not going to disobey him.
How would you control the underage drinking and drug use in Tiburon? And, well, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a really, really important question, and I'm constantly seeing if my 10 and 12-year-old are getting into the liquor cabinet. But, it's a real issue, and I think that we as a community and we as parents and as non-parents need to be pretty vigilant and get to know the folks in our community. I do know that at some of the high schools, we don't really see it at the junior high, but in the high schools, there is a lot of underage drinking and drug use. And part of what we're doing is making sure that parents are at home when there's parties. If they're not, then there's a problem there. We're trying to, our police are very good and they're very active in also trying to make sure that people are not drinking underage. There's another thing we're looking at that's kind of related is now marijuana is legalized. So people are starting to talk about how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with like some of the candy that might look good for children? Because certainly you don't want children to pick something up that is not for them.
Okay. What would you say are the top 2 most important issues in your city?
It's hard to be limited to 2. I think in Tiburon, we have one road in and one road out. It's a huge issue. Traffic along Tiburon Boulevard is a very big issue. I'm actually on the JPA that is trying to help with the congestion management. So, we have a yellow bus program. We're trying to deal with that. Revitalization of downtown. We have quite a few shops, like many small towns where they're not rented and businesses come in and out. The Martha property is a huge issue in Tiburon and the open space. So those are the 3. I also worked very hard on a plan to try to help pedestrian, bicycle, and automobile safety and education. So that's a large priority of mine.
Okay, thank you.
You have any more? That's it.
One,
Well,
and it has to do with
okay,
global warming.
Okay.
Has your city addressed global warming?
I think we
Because of
have.
sea level rises.
Yes, we have addressed global warming. There is more, though, that we can do. And I know that there's a local climate action plan that we're working on. In addition, I'd like to see our town go deep green to try to help with that as well. So, sea level rise is a huge issue in Tiburon because a lot of our homes are on the water. So there has been a lot of planning and a lot of work done on that.
All right. Well, that ends our evening. Thank you. We
great.
saved the best for last.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank all of the candidates, all of the members, and everybody else who came out to support the candidates and hear them speak tonight. I want to give a thank you again to our questioners, Frida Zolan, Joan Thayer, Gina Brewer, our timekeepers, Greg Brockbank, and the lovely Ruth Carter, Renita Egger, who was handing out the cards, there she is in the back, and I'm Tammy Hull, and we are adjourned